I am really concerned about the politicization. I am very concerned about the politicization. Welcome to Think Like a Jesuit. I'm Father Eric Sundrup, joined by Father Paddy Gilger, and today we are discussing
Communion Wars.
joy.
Yeah, as you know, this is a super hot topic, one I'm very eager to discuss.
Just can't wait for this one.
But this is back in the news cycle lately because of a decision made by the Archbishop of San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone, to publicly bar Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi from receiving communion in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. Speaker Pelosi has persisted in supporting abortion rights for many years, which is clearly contrary to church teaching. But there are people on the other side who say that the Eucharist ought not be used as a weapon to discipline people in public. Especially these people would rely on Pope Francis's statement that communion is not a prize for the perfect, but a medicine for the sick.
Yeah.
We can see a lot of this in the tweets that were shared right afterwards.
Ooh, there's some tweets. You want to
Yes.
start sharing those?
Please. As Father Daniel Haran said, for example, the Eucharist is not a weapon. Those who turn it into one are idolaters and sinners themselves, he tweets. Christ associated with those deemed unworthy by religious and civil leaders. He dined with them, opened the scriptures, and broke the bread with them. It's a scandal to deny communion.
And I think he got a pretty clear response from Father Matthew Schneider, responding to the Eucharist is not a weapon. Those who turn it into one are idolaters and sinners themselves. Said, yes, those who feign Catholicism with the Eucharist for politics commit sacrilege, and it is a scandal to deny communion. He responded, yes, it is a scandal that we have people who make this necessary. The Napa Institute noted Archbishop Cordileone is a profile in Christian charity. In taking this action, he has shown true love for the Lord, the Church, the truth, the unborn, and even the souls of those who've fallen away.
So, a lot of agreement over what's
Right.
happening here. Do you have a sense, Eric, where would you put the conflict that's happening?
We were talking a little earlier. I think one thing I would send everyone back to their room without supper. Tell them to be quiet. We're not discussing this until tomorrow. Then we're all having dinner together. I'm really concerned about how political this is getting, and how that it has really just kind of fallen starkly on political lines, and that using. I am very sympathetic to the arguments that this feels a lot like we're using communion as a weapon. And I think that is deeply problematic.
I think it's clear that the inconsistency in the application of church teaching stark.
Yeah, it's very stark. So this is the one that triggers this, but there's so many other moments that, and then what it would happen is it would challenge across the board, across Republicans and Democrats, because neither party is in line with the depth and breadth of Catholic teaching on life and how we're supposed to respect that in all the different forms and all the different ways we can work on that, and all the different teachings about the dignity of human beings. There's immigration, there's death penalty, there's all these other things that are important. Abortion is a big issue as well, right? So we've got a lot going on here. But I also think both sides are not listening to each other, right, at all.
One of the things I think is most difficult for me today, I can speak for myself, is that American Catholics are truly politically homeless. Like, we do not have a place where all of the teachings of Catholic social teaching on the right to life, on anti-racism, on etc., policy after policy, are supported by a political party. And it forces us into a position where if we are going to participate at the national level in our democracy, we feel absolutely torn. I feel absolutely torn between these different things without trying to minimize the direness of the situation, like the many lives lost to abortion, many lives lost to enormously relevant other policies that are, lack of care for life in our country.
One of the things that's really hard is the national nature of this argument, and then the national shaming that's going on that just really makes dialogue all but impossible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to take seriously the fact that we are living in a time right now when we do not necessarily have only one Catholic home. There are many Catholic homes, and because we live in this kind of like large public sphere where every bishop has a public voice, Like, we're no longer just listening to the bishop of our local place, who has hopefully a relationship with us or with our pastor, and our pastor can have a set of conversations here, and we get these conflicting messages between members of our own hierarchy, and that puts us in an enormous tension on us. So the question in that sense is, how do I live with this tension? I think that question of how we live with this tension gets even deeper when we realize that for me, and not just for me, like for our church, the experience of the Eucharist, going to communion, is supposed to be the source and the summit, the moment at which we are all united, doing the same thing together, eating at the table of the Lord, receiving He Himself, who gives Himself to us, the God who gives Himself to us. And that's supposed to be this prime moment of unity. And instead of being a prime moment of unity, it's this prime moment of division, an enormous, again, source of pain in the midst of it. The reality of living in that kind of tension can push us towards two kinds of reactions: withdrawal or lashing out. And I think it's clear that neither of those, withdrawal or lashing out, come from the good spirit. They're motivated by a sense of protectiveness, of isolation, of fear and worry. And so the opposite then has to become a real mantra for me in my own spiritual life. It's this. It comes from a real mentor of mine. He said, the place of tension is the place of grace. And so to withdraw from the tension means to withdraw from the grace.
One of the things I would point out, the think like a Jesuit part of this, I think in this discussion, something we often refer to as the presupposition needs to be applied. And I think that actually invites you into that tension.
Tell us about the presupposition.
Yeah, so the presupposition is this idea that you don't take the least form of the argument, or even if it's a poorly presented argument that someone gives, you give them every good intention and meaning possible and supply all of the possible, best possible interpretations to that argument, so that you can engage truly in good faith with that argument, that person, whatever it is. And that, I think, changes the tenor. That invites you into the tension.
Excellent.
That asks you then to think, what is this person trying to do? What is the good that is trying to be accomplished? And refocuses you not on they're making me uncomfortable, they're doing something evil. Like what can I give a presupposition here that they're actually trying to do something good? So let's you can play it out for Coeur d'Alene. What is he trying to say? He's trying to say that this support of abortion is contrary to the church's teaching, and it violates the dignity of human persons, the lives and protection of the unborn. This is a scandal and a problem, and we need to name that, right? So what's the best possible read you can give to what he's trying to do there, right? On the same thing, you would have to do that with Pelosi. What is she trying to do here? She's talking a lot about women's rights, right? She's talking a lot about socioeconomic problems that are happening, without access to abortion, that changes the situation. How do we support the people that are on the margins, that find themselves with unwanted pregnancies? The marginalization that has been experienced by women throughout history and in recent history in this country as well. Yeah. So how do you then engage all of that, right? And then you might find in that conversation and those tension points a place for then collaborative work together on something that is for the good of everyone.
It's difficult, especially for me, but important to note that the presupposition that you described for us, that comes from the preface page, like the introductory page of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And he places this right there to say that we always have to try to put the best interpretation possible on the words that come to us from another. Now, that's a beautiful statement from Ignatius, but 2 points about that. One is that this really emerges not just from Ignatius, but from St. Augustine, who says that every action is always seeking the good.
You had to pull Augustine into it.
I love Augustine very much, almost more than Ignatius. And it's true, but I love it.
With good reason.
But that first idea that every action is always seeking the good. So the question then becomes for us, how is this action of another actually seeking some good? And how can I understand it in that light? The second point of context is that Ignatius is offering this very comment right in the midst of the Reformation.
Yeah.
So if we think that we're the only ones who are trying to apply this very difficult presupposition in the midst of a tense situation, a situation that really puts pressure on us, this is absolutely not the case. Yeah. He's advocating for this in the midst of a situation where the church itself is fracturing apart, which is often what feels like it's happening to us right now today. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I would want to say about this is that this desire for receiving the Eucharist as a sign and a reality of our communion with one another, I would hope that there could be a moment where our church, recognizing real divisions within it, can nevertheless cling to the Eucharist itself as a source and a promise of unity. A source of an unrealized unity in the moment and a promise of unity that we can come to in the future. And I would hope that we can move towards something like this.
That's a very different form of understanding the Eucharist than I think we're seeing in a lot of the tweets and what's going on there.
Well, I feel it in myself this way. Like when Pope Francis says that the Eucharist itself is not a prize for the perfect, but medicine for the sick, I feel like right now what we are experiencing, the tension we experience in our world today, is a sign of this sickness. And we need this medicine of mercy, like we need this medicine of unity to be able to bring us together and to be able to even have these conversations across fierce differences, understanding that people on different sides of this issue may be seeking the good.
It might not be that we'll get to that ideal place or the perfect or the policies that we want that entirely match up, but we can make some movement. And that willingness to then make that movement with each other, I think, is crucial, but it's really hard. I've not seen a lot of willingness on that.
No, especially not in recent times.
I know he's a friend of both of ours. I've found articles from Sam Sawyer at American Media where he is tireless in trying to apply that to this discussion on abortion. If he takes the very best read of all the sides, how can that be applied? Mm-hmm. And I watch him get ripped up on Twitter for that, but I think it's been for me really informative about how to go into this. So watching, if you need something to help you through this, pay very close attention to the people that go into the dialogue looking for the good of the person they're in the dialogue with. That is a really crucial component of applying that presupposition. If you're looking to navigate through this tension, those are the people you should be reading, paying attention to, following. The vitriol on either side or the damnations on either side, I think that those aren't going to help you. I would read those through thinking like a Jesuit. That's going to be a lot of evil spirit territory, and I would steer clear if I could.
If we as a church are going to be able to move forward in actually being a productive advocate for pro-life causes across the spectrum in the United States of America in the 21st century, we have to be able to not tear ourselves apart in the process. If we can't model this synodal dialogical process, then I'm not sure we're going to be able to make the kind of impact that Christ is wanting us to make on the society in which we're immersed.
Synodal dialogical. Why don't we just leave it there?
Fine. We're very grateful, though, that you have joined us for this conversation. We hope that you'll like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find more resources on these and many other difficult topics at americamagazine.org. We're very grateful that you joined us. For Father Eric Sundrup, I'm Father Paddy Gilger. Thank you.